She sits before a mirror, combing her golden hair. Her white silk robe slips from her shoulder. Flowers surround her. Everything in this scene whispers luxury, beauty, perfection. But if you look closer, you will notice something unsettling. She is not looking at you. She is looking at herself, studying herself, perfecting herself, and that changes everything. This is Lady Lilith, painted by Dante Gabriel Rossetti between 1866 and 1868. And this painting was never about beauty. It was about power. Dangerous, seductive, unapologetic power. Because the woman in this painting is not just any woman. According to ancient myth, she was Adam's first wife, and she refused to obey him. The story of Lilith does not appear in the main text of Genesis, but it emerged from ancient Judaic tradition as an attempt to explain a troubling contradiction in the creation story. In the first chapter of Genesis, God creates man and woman together, as equals, from the same dust. But later in the text, God creates Eve from Adam's rib, making her secondary, derived from him. So the question arose, if they were created equal first, what happened to that first woman? The answer, according to the legend, was Lilith. She was made from the same earth as Adam, his equal in every way. But when Adam demanded that she submit to him, that she be beneath him, Lilith refused, and so she left Eden. According to the myths that developed over centuries, Lilith became something else entirely, a figure of darkness, one who tempted men away from righteousness, and in some versions, brought harm to children. By the time Rossetti painted this in the 1860s, Lilith had become a symbol of dangerous female sexuality, of beauty that conceals darkness, of power that refuses to submit. And in Victorian England, where women were fighting for the right to own property, to vote, to be anything other than obedient wives and mothers, the figure of Lilith took on a new and urgent significance. She became both a warning and a threat. Dante Gabriel Rossetti was born in London in 1828, the son of an Italian political exile. He grew up surrounded by art, literature, and radical ideas. And in 1848, at age 20, he helped found the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, a group of young artists who rejected academic traditions and sought to paint with medieval sincerity and startling realism. Rossetti was charismatic, impulsive, brilliant. He was also deeply troubled. In 1849, he met Elizabeth Siddall, a young woman discovered working in a milliner's shop. She became his model, his student, his muse. She was extraordinarily talented, both as a painter and a poet, and she loved him desperately. But Rossetti delayed their marriage for over a decade. He was unfaithful, and Elizabeth's health declined. She suffered from mysterious illnesses, took laudanum for pain, and grew increasingly dependent on the drug. They finally married in May 1860. In 1861, Elizabeth gave birth to a stillborn daughter. Already devastated by depression and her dependency on laudanum, she passed away on February 11, 1862, at age 32. The circumstances were tragic. Rossetti was devastated by her loss. Rossetti was shattered. In a grand romantic gesture, he placed a manuscript of his unpublished poems in her coffin before burial. But grief, for Rossetti, did not mean solitude. Around 1857, Rossetti met a woman named Fanny Cornforth. She was born Sarah Cox, the daughter of a blacksmith in Sussex, and when she encountered Rossetti in London, she was working as a courtesan. Their meeting, according to legend, happened by chance on the street. Rossetti was immediately struck by her beauty. Unlike Elizabeth Siddall's pale, ethereal delicacy, Fanny was voluptuous, sensual, full of life. She had golden hair, a curving figure, and a frankness that shocked Rossetti's middle-class friends and family. She became his model, then his mistress. After Elizabeth's death in 1862, Fanny moved into Rossetti's home as his housekeeper and companion. Rossetti's family despised her. His brother William Michael wrote that she had no charm of breeding, education, or intellect. His friends pressured him to end the relationship, but Fanny remained. For 20 years, until Rossetti's death, she was his constant companion. And in 1866, when Rossetti began work on Lady Lilith, commissioned by wealthy shipping magnate Frederick Leyland for the substantial sum of 472 lire, it was Fanny's face and body he painted, her golden hair, her full figure, her unapologetic sensuality. This was the original Lady Lilith, a working-class woman painted as the first temptress. And then, 6 years later, Rossetti painted over her face. In 1873, the painting was returned to Rossetti's studio. Either Leyland requested the change, or Rossetti decided on his own, but the alteration was significant. Fanny Cornforth's face was replaced with that of Alexa Wilding. Alexa was a professional model who had posed for many of Rossetti's paintings. Born Alice Wilding, she was paid a retainer of £1 per week. Unlike Fanny, she had no romantic relationship with Rossetti. She was refined, respectable. She looked, as some suggested, less earthy. So the face you see in the painting today, housed in the Delaware Art Museum, is not the face of the woman who inspired it. It is a replacement, an erasure. But the body, the hair, the pose, remain Fanny's. There is a watercolor version from 1867 that preserves Fanny's original face. It is now in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and when you compare the two, you see what was lost. Fanny's Lilith looks directly at the viewer. Her gaze is knowing, challenging, almost amused. Alexa's Lilith looks away, dreamy and distant. One is dangerous, the other is merely decorative. Let us look at what Rossetti actually created here. Lilith sits before a mirror, combing her magnificent golden hair. She wears a loose white robe that reveals her shoulder. Her hair dominates the canvas like a living thing, flowing, abundant, overwhelming, and that hair is the key to understanding this painting. Rossetti attached a verse from Goethe's Faust, translated by Shelley, to the original frame. Beware of her fair hair, for she excels all women in the magic of her locks, and when she twines them round a young man's neck, she will not ever set him free again. The hair is not decoration, it is a weapon. Behind Lilith, the space is crowded and strange. White roses surround her, poppies bloom in the corner, foxgloves stand near the mirror. Every flower carries symbolic meaning. The white roses represent cold, sensuous love without spiritual depth. The poppies signify sleep, forgetfulness, perhaps death. The foxgloves indicate insincerity and deception. And that mirror, look at that mirror. It is impossible. It reflects both the candles inside the room and what appears to be a garden scene outside. It shows two spaces at once, as if the boundary between interior and exterior, between reality and illusion, has collapsed. Lilith is not in a real room. She is in a liminal space, a place between worlds, and she is not looking at us. She is looking at herself, perfecting herself, preparing. Rossetti later wrote his own sonnet about this painting, which he titled Body's Beauty, in 1881. It describes Lilith as subtly of herself contemplative, and warns that she draws men to watch the bright web she can weave, till heart and body and life are in its hold. This is not a woman lost in vanity. This is a predator perfecting her trap. If I had to explain why this painting feels so unsettling, it would not be because of the myth, or the symbolism, or even the tragic story of the women whose faces were painted and erased. It is because Rossetti painted female power as something monstrous. Lilith is punished in this myth not for being evil, but for refusing submission, for demanding equality, for leaving rather than accepting subordination. And in Victorian England, where the women's emancipation movement was gaining strength, where women were beginning to demand rights over their own property, their own bodies, their own lives, the figure of Lilith expressed a very specific cultural anxiety. What happens when women refuse to obey? What happens when they claim power over their own desires? According to this painting, they become dangerous, seductive, monstrous. There was even a letter found among Rossetti's papers, dated November 1869, in which someone wrote to the Athenaeum newspaper calling Lilith the first strong-minded woman and the original advocate of women's rights. The threat was explicit. Female independence equals demonic corruption. And yet, there is something else here too, something Rossetti may not have intended, because when you look at Lilith in this painting, you do not see weakness. You do not see submission or regret. You see a woman who knows exactly what she is doing, who is utterly self-possessed, who does not need approval or forgiveness. And perhaps that is what makes her truly dangerous. Not her beauty, not her sexuality, but her refusal to apologize for either. Rossetti continued to paint until his death in 1882. His mental and physical health deteriorated over his final years. Fanny Cornforth remained loyal to him until the end. After his family forced her out of his house in 1877, Rossetti set her up in a nearby residence, writing, "You are the only person whom it is my duty to provide for." In 1879, she married John Schott, a publican, and they ran the Rose Tavern together. After Rossetti's death, they opened a Rossetti gallery to sell some of the work she owned. John died in 1891. By 1905, Fanny's health was declining. She spent her final years in care, passing away on February 24, 1909, at age 74. Alexa Wilding, the woman whose face replaced Fanny's, outlived them both. She kept her distance from the chaos of Rossetti's personal life. She survived with her dignity intact. And Lady Lilith became one of Rossetti's most famous works. It has been reproduced, analyzed, reinterpreted countless times. Art historians debate its meaning. Feminists have reclaimed Lilith as a symbol of resistance. The painting endures. Perhaps the most important thing to understand about Lady Lilith is this: it was never about beauty. It was about power, about what happens when beauty refuses to be passive, when it demands recognition, when it will not apologize. Rossetti was trying to paint a warning, a cautionary tale about dangerous women, about what happens when women refuse their assigned roles. But he created something more complex than he intended, because despite the condemnation embedded in the myth, despite the replacement of Fanny's face with something more respectable, Lilith remains powerful in this painting. She is not a victim. She is not defeated. She sits in her impossible room, surrounded by her symbolic flowers, gazing at herself with absolute self-possession. Thank you for watching this video. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What do you see when you look at Lady Lilith? Beauty or danger? Victim or predator? Or something else entirely?